Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder if a computer could predict what people will do in a social experiment? It sounds like science fiction, right? Well, new research suggests that the AI we're all talking about might be able to do just that, and it's got some pretty big implications for how we do science. This paper is asking a big question. Can these super smart computer programs, these large language models, or LLMs, actually predict the outcomes of experiments that social scientists run to understand human behavior? Think about it. They've already shown they can write stories, answer questions, and even hold conversations. But can they step into the shoes of thousands of people and tell us how they'd react to an experiment? This is especially interesting because they want to see if LLMs can predict results from studies that weren't even around when the AI was trained, meaning they have to come up with something new, not just repeat what they've already seen. The researchers gathered a huge collection of experiments. We're talking about 70 experiments that were carefully designed, representative of the US population, and involved over 100,000 participants. These weren't just random guesses. They were pre-registered, meaning scientists planned them out beforehand and shared their hypotheses. This makes them really high. Quality studies. Imagine feeding all the details of these experiments into an eighth setup, the questions, the choices people had to make, and then asking the AI to simulate how a typical American sample would respond. That's exactly what they did. So how did they do this simulation? They fed a powerful AI, specifically GPT-4, all the information about an experiment. This included things like the study scenario, the exact text participants would see, and the questions they'd be asked. Then they asked the AI to act like a participant and respond. They did this for many simulated participants, representing different ages, genders, races, and political views, all based on real US demographics. By comparing how the AI predicted people would respond in different experimental groups, they could estimate what they call the treatment effect, basically how much the experimental change seemed to influence people's answers or behaviors. Just like in a real experiment. And here is where it gets really interesting. The predictions from GPT-4 were impressively accurate. They found that the AI's predictions were strongly connected to the actual results of these experiments. This accuracy was so good, it was right up there with what you'd get if you asked a large group of humans to guess the results. This is huge because it suggests that LLMs can grasp the nuances of how people might react in these social science setups. A really important part of this study was checking if the AI was just remembering results from studies it had seen during its training. To test this, they focused on experiments that hadn't even been published or posted online when GPT-4's training data ran out. The amazing thing is, the AI's predictions were still highly accurate for these novel studies. Meaning it wasn't just recalling information, it was actually predicting outcomes it hadn't been explicitly taught. They also found similar good results using other popular, openly available AI models, which is great for making sure these findings aren't just specific to one company's AI. Now, while the predictions were highly correlated with the real results, there was a consistent pattern. The AI tended to overestimate how big the effects would be. It was like the AI thought people would react more strongly than they actually did. This is a key limitation. Even though it could predict the direction and general size of effects, the absolute numbers were often a bit inflated. This is actually something they noticed human forecasters did too, so it seems to be a common challenge in predicting human behavior. They didn't stop there. They looked at another set of studies called mega studies, which involve even more participants and test many different interventions at once. Here, the predictions weren't quite as spot on as in the first set, but they were still pretty good, and importantly, they were as good as predictions made by actual experts in the field. This shows that even with more complex research designs, LLMs can offer valuable insights. So, what does this all mean for science? The researchers explored several cool applications. Imagine using AI for pilot testing. Instead of spending a lot of money and time running a small experiment with real people, you could use an AI to get a preliminary idea of how things might turn out. This could save researchers a ton of resources. They found that only pilot studies were about as good as running a small experiment with hundreds of human participants. And combining AI with a small human sample was even better. Think about a researcher with a great idea for an experiment. Before they recruit thousands of people, they could use an LLM to simulate tens of thousands of responses. This AI-based pilot study could help them refine their questions, identify potential problems, and get a better estimate of the effect size they should expect. This is super valuable because real, World pilot studies with human participants can be very expensive and time-consuming. Another use is identifying studies that might not be as robust as they seem. Sometimes, studies that find a significant result might have done so because of chance, especially if the sample size was small. This study found that LLM predictions could help flag research findings that are less likely to be replicated in larger, better-powered studies. It is like an early warning system for the scientific community, helping to focus replication efforts on the most promising or potentially problematic findings. They also looked at how LLMs could help find the most effective ways to encourage positive behaviors, like getting vaccinated or supporting public health messages. By comparing AI predictions with expert forecasts, they found that combining AI insights with human judgment led to selecting interventions that were slightly more effective. This means that for things like public health campaigns, AI could help tailor messages for maximum impact. To see if scientists are on board with this, they surveyed over 400 social scientists. A big majority of them said they'd be likely to use AI tools for things like pilot testing, intervention selection, and figuring out which studies need more research. This shows there is a real appetite in the scientific community for these kinds of AI-powered tools. But with great power comes great responsibility, right? The researchers also explored the potential downsides. One major concern is bias. Since LLMs are trained on vast amounts of text data from the internet, they can pick up on existing societal biases. They tested this and found that while predictions were generally good across different demographic groups, there were small differences, with AI predictions sometimes being slightly more accurate for white and Republican participants compared to Black and Democratic participants. This is something that needs careful attention as we use these tools more. They looked closely at whether the AI's predictions were biased against certain groups. While the overall accuracy was high, they did find some slight differences. For example, predictions for white participants showed a slightly better correlation with actual results than for Black participants, and similarly for Republicans compared to Democrats. This doesn't mean the AI is intentionally being unfair, but it highlights that biases present in the data the AI learned from can still show up in its predictions. It means we need to be extra careful when using AI for research involving diverse populations. Another big risk is misuse. If an AI can predict what messages are persuasive, it could be used for harmful purposes, like designing more effective disinformation campaigns. The researchers tested this by looking at a study about anti-vaccination messages. They found that the AI could indeed identify messages that were predicted to reduce vaccine intentions, showing that current AI safety measures might not be enough to prevent the spread of harmful content. They even shared their findings with AI companies to help address this. So, stepping back, this study is a really big deal. It shows that LLMs are not just fancy chatbots. They are becoming powerful tools that can genuinely assist in scientific research. They can predict experimental outcomes with surprising accuracy, even for studies they haven't seen before. This has the potential to speed up scientific discovery, make research more efficient, and even help us tackle some of the biggest problems we face. The most exciting part is how this can be used. Think about it. LLMs can act as a low-cost way to pilot test ideas, helping researchers avoid dead ends and focus on what is most likely to work. They can help us identify research findings that might be shaky and need more solid confirmation, and they can help us craft better messages for public health or social good initiatives. It is all about using these AI predictions to augment, not replace human judgment and real-world research. This idea of low-cost piloting is revolutionary. Imagine a student or a researcher with a limited budget. Instead of needing thousands of dollars for a pilot study, they could use an AI simulation for a fraction of the cost. This democratizes research and makes it more accessible. This is crucial for the replication crisis in science. By helping identify potentially flimsy results early on, LLMs can guide researchers to focus their efforts on studies that are truly robust, making science more reliable. In urgent situations like a pandemic, being able to quickly figure out which public health messages are most persuasive could save lives. LLMs offer a way to do this efficiently. Of course, it's not perfect. The study acknowledges that LLMs are better at predicting certain types of effects, like those from text-based experiments with clear outcomes. They're a bit less accurate with things like videos or complex behavioral outcomes. This makes sense. LLMs are language models, so text is their strongest suit also. The tendency to overestimate effect sizes means we need to be careful about taking the AI's numbers as gospel. It is more about relative comparisons and direction than precise magnitudes without recalibration. The researchers also were upfront about the limitations. The experiments they used were mostly from the US, so it is unclear how well these predictions would work for other countries. And while they tested the AI's ability to predict results across different demographics, the actual experiments in their dataset didn't show a lot of variation between groups. So, more research is needed with datasets that have more variety in outcomes across different groups to fully understand bias. This finding about demographic bias is really important. It means we can't just blindly trust AI predictions without thinking critically. We need to be aware that the AI might not be perfectly neutral, and that further work is needed to make these models fairer and more accurate for everyone. So, what's my take on this? It is truly fascinating to see how far AI has come. The ability of LLMs to predict social science experiment results is a testament to their advanced pattern recognition and language understanding capabilities. It opens up exciting avenues for making research more efficient and accessible. However, the study rightly points out the need for caution. The overestimation of effect sizes means we still need to recalibrate AI predictions with real-world data. And the potential for bias, as shown in the demographic analysis, is a serious concern that requires ongoing effort to mitigate. The risk of misuse is also a critical ethical consideration that AI developers and researchers must address. Looking ahead, I think we'll see LLMs become increasingly integrated into the research process, not as replacements for human scientists or participants, but as powerful assistants. Future research will likely focus on improving accuracy, reducing bias, and exploring AI's capabilities in areas like field experiments and non-text. Based stimuli, the key is to use these tools responsibly and ethically, always keeping in mind that human judgment and empirical validation remain essential. It's an exciting time to be watching how AI transforms science, and this research is a huge step in that direction. What do you all think? Could you see yourself using AI to help with your research or to understand complex social phenomena? Let me know in the comments below, and if you found this breakdown helpful, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more science explained, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.